Hello, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of the Centre for Western Mindfulness. Welcome to the second post that we're doing in a mini-series entitled HALE. HALE is one of the mindfulness tools that we teach at the Centre for Western Mindfulness when we're having people find various ways that they're able to, in a very practical day-to-day way, live lives being more mindful. In the first in this series, we discussed H in HALE, which was about halting. This is the idea of if you're finding yourself where you're in a place of being out of your stillness, where you're being discombobulated, then the first thing you're going to do is halt and observe the facts. And so we went into detail describing the various ways that you're able to become the observer of what's going on around you. Now we're going to sustain this place of being the observer in A, and A literally means after effect in the acronym, and after effect is about if I make a choice about how to respond to this particular circumstance that's taking me out of my peace, what's going to be the after effect of the choice that I make? And so it's about stopping and observing what it is that's going to manifest if I go down a certain path in terms of the choice that I make in response to the trigger that's taken me out of my peace. The second principle, and we have 5 principles at the Centre for Western Mindfulness that are fundamental to the whole concept of Western mindfulness. The second principle states, you can't change what you can't see. So invariably, we can't see much of what we're doing because it's habitual. It's so programmed into our consciousness that we're unaware many times of the things that we're doing. It just happens because that's what we've been programmed to do. And of course, the reason that we have subconscious behaviours, and so subconscious means under the state of awareness, the reason we have that is for efficiency of time and energy. So it's kind of interesting that when we are able to function in our life habitually, then it's efficient. We're able to encounter people and situations and move through them really in terms of how we're experiencing them and relating to them. We can move through them effortlessly because we have a previous way of dealing with this that we've worked out works best for us, although not always, of course, because oftentimes what we find is that our habits result in us experiencing pain and suffering on many occasions, and it's kind of funny that we keep on reverting to those habits. But once a neural pathway, and a neural pathway is essentially an established way in which the brain responds to a certain set of stimuli. There's nerve pathways that are established there. When they're so established, it's really hard to change those behaviours. And that's a part of what we're talking about today, is about the reprogramming of new neural pathways. It's about creating new pathways in the brain that we can go instead of following our old habitual patterns. There's a saying or an adage that goes, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And that's the whole essence of functioning habitually. And that's why being able to observe the after effect is really relatively quite easy when we're able to step back and stop and consider what the after effect is because we've gone down this path so many times and we've created the same result so many times that we know what's going to happen because we've been there and done it because it's a habit. And so, but the difference being is that normally we go down these paths unaware or not present to what's going on. And we end up finding ourselves in the same situation that we've always been in before. And I gave the example in the written blogs about a husband and wife or a couple, and the fact that the same thing, sometimes different forms, but the content, and this was about not respecting the wife, keeps on being played out over and over and over again, and the wife is able to know what the end result is without even having to wait to go there. But because we live our lives so habitually, because she's living a life so habitually, she keeps on ending up in this same place, as we do when we're presented with situations that cause us to be stressed, that have us out of our peace, that cause discombobulation. We keep on going there. We keep on finding ourselves in these situations over and over and over again. So, in terms of being about the after effect, is another act of observation. So HALE was about observing the facts, and so this is about stepping back and being the witness to the details of what's going on without giving any of it a meaning. And we're going to be doing the same, or using the same skill set, in order to consider what the after effect's going to be if I go down certain routes under these circumstances. So once again, this becomes another process of observation. And because it's habitual and because it's been repeated so many times, it's really easy for us to know what the after effect's going to be. But instead of doing it unaware, now we're stepping back before we make any decision about how we're responding to this circumstance. We're taking time and we're putting in the effort to be able to observe and consider what the effect is going to be if we go down certain routes. Now, the thing about being the observer, and I talked about this in the last blog, is that we're not going to engage what it is that we're observing. In other words, we're not going to place any value on it. We're not going to, as I talked about in the previous blogs, we're not going to put a comma in. So we're not going to give it any meaning. We're not going to say that going down this is right or wrong. We're not going to go anywhere else other than just to observe the facts of the effect. And so it's still a fact-finding mission, but now it's not about what's happening in this moment. It's about considering what the facts are in terms of what the outcome's going to be moving forward. So this means that you're not going to, by moving into the place of being the observer, fix anything. This is a really important thing at this point, is that you're not going to be motivated to, in this place, to go, oh, this needs to be corrected, this needs to be changed, because that's placing a judgment on what's gone on. It's a really fine distinction, but it's important that all you do in this place is stay in the place of being the observer of what you know to be the after effect, given your previous experience. Now, if you're not going to fix anything, it makes sense that you're going to ask the question, well, how does not fixing this going to fix it? And that's really a very, very important question, because this is about understanding the power of observation to change reality. So the fourth principle in the Center for Western Mindfulness states, when something is observed authentically, it changes. I'm going to say that again. When something is observed authentically, it changes. So, like, this is really hard to comprehend, particularly in our world, given our Judeo-Christian model where no pain, no gain. So it's like, if you want to change something, you've got to work your ass off in order for it to be different. And what we're saying here is that change happens purely as a result of observation. How many of you have been on diets in order to lose weight, or taken up exercise regimes in order to improve your fitness? And how sustainable was it? How many diets have you been on? How many exercise routines have you engaged in throughout your lifetime and still find yourself back where you were before? You've put the effort into fixing it, and in many cases without it being a sustainable result. And so people even use interventions like drugs, medication and things like that, hypnosis, and many times find themselves back to where they were before. And even in the work that we do, as we try to have people bring this process of staying mindful as opposed to an acting change, we often find people habitually moving into the place of fixing it. And of course, what we witness is it takes them right back to where they were before. And of course, many of us know, and I've been here and done this over the years of losing weight or through diet, is that not only do I put the weight back on once the wheels come off the diet regime, but because of guilt and shame about not being able to sustain the change, sometimes it compounds the behaviour, and in my case, I'd put on more weight. And so, in fact, it wasn't really fixing anything. In fact, in many cases, it was making it worse. Here's an interesting concept, and this is a really important one to understand, is that we see the world as we are, not as it is. And there's so much research now that really has driven home the understanding that we're creating our reality through our mind. In other words, we're able to enrich the experience of what's going on in our world through the filters of our mind and the way in which it plays out in terms of what's going on in our world. Now, a very simple example of this is where somebody tells you about a new car, for example, that's been released, and you go, oh, I've never seen one of those. And then all of a sudden you move out into the world and you see those cars all of a sudden everywhere. So once it comes into your consciousness, then you're able to have it turn up in your reality. And of course, what happens is when things are placed in our consciousness, then it's like we place filters on everything else. And all of a sudden, all of those things become a part of our reality. It's nearly like we're manifesting, and it's like people are turning up to fulfill our fantasy or our what it is that we have as the filter in our consciousness of what reality is really all about. But at the end of the day, that saying is the world we see is the world I am. That's very, very true. In other words, we have these filters that basically distort reality to match our expectation. Now, what happens then is that immersed in our states of loneliness, scarcity, victimhood and failure, when those things become who we are, then ironically enough, that becomes our reality. In other words, we literally create scenarios which sustain our loneliness, We create scenarios which sustain our scarcity, our lack of abundance. We create scenarios where we become sustained victims of the same sort of things that are happening to us that we have no control over. We sustain the whole idea that no matter what we do, we keep on failing. And so who we are becomes the world that we experience. And as I said, it's nearly like we invite actors to turn up. It was interesting. I was just donating some goods to a domestic violence centre where they provide accommodation for people who are having to find accommodation and they've walked out of their home and they don't have anything. And the lady who was running the centre said, "Oh, it's been such a bad week." She said, "We had a man come in with a replica pistol and held a gun at us in a charity shop." And it's sort of like, whoa, here's the perfect example in what I'm explaining here, that where somebody has this understanding of being able to be violated in this way, it's no surprise that here we have somebody turning up behaving in this way. And so when we start to look at our lives, we begin to realize that all of these things keep on being perpetuated in our experience. And it's like we're stuck and we can't break free of this. And what we're giving you in the process of HALE is a really important tool for being able to break free of these old patterns that keep us in our suffering, that have us continually experiencing states of discombobulation. Okay, so what happens when you're the observer? And this is what I'm wanting to do now, is explain the power of observation to change reality. When you become the observer, you're stepping back. It's like you're stepping back from yourself. You're stepping outside of you and you're looking back and witnessing you in the facts of what's going on, and in this case, the projected facts given your past history. So it's like you're stepping back and being the witness in H of the facts of what's going on, the facts that are presented, and now in A, you're being the observer of the potential after effect given what you know from your history in the scenario that's being presented. But at this point, you're just being the observer. Now, the key about being the observer is the observer doesn't feel anything. The observer doesn't judge anything. It doesn't see anything as being right or wrong, good or bad. It doesn't give a value to anything that it's observing. It's just observing the facts. So in H, it's just observing what actually was in the encounter. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, if it hurt, it does matter if it hurts, but you're just observing the impact of the facts of what happened. And in the case of A, all you're doing is observing the potential outcome based on what you know from the past. It's not right or wrong. You're just saying, I've been in this situation before, and this is what happened. This is where I ended up under these circumstances. And this is how I felt. So it doesn't deny feelings, but you're just observing the feelings. You're not making it right or wrong. You're just basically stating whatever is factual about it. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that when you're in the place of being the observer and the fact that you're not feeling anything, this is a place of relief. This is a place of comfort. It's kind of an interesting thing, but as you begin to practice being the observer more and more, you begin to realize that this is actually, I'm going to use the word yummy, this is a really yummy place to be, because you're not feeling the feelings. You're not being caught up in the resentment or the fear or the things that normally would consume you. You're actually stepping back, and as the observer of it, it's like you, the observer, is here, and you, the person who's engaging the experience, is over there. And as the observer, you're in a place of peace. You're sitting there in this place where you're actually feeling quite, oh, wow, this is really comfortable for me to be in this place. And in fact, in the place of the observer, you can find yourself coming back to breathing quite normally and naturally. You can feel your shoulders relax. In the place of the observer, there's actually a place of inner peace that you're able to experience just by the fact that you've been able to remove your filters. And what happens in this place of being the observer is that you actually invite the gift or the manifestation of love, abundance, purpose, and fulfillment to manifest. And I'm going to explain that in a bit more detail, but literally this is what happens in this place of being the observer, is that in this place here, you're making it possible for, and in the blog I use the word grace, but grace is the gift of love, abundance, purpose, and fulfillment. You're able to have this manifest just by stepping back and being the observer. Now, I live in a rainforest, and I want to talk about this as a metaphor. If I don't do anything to stop the rapid manifestation of vegetation around my home, and I'm literally right in the middle of rainforest, it just is prolific in terms of the amount and the rate of growth that takes place when I don't interfere with that. And so what happens is nature has this amazing ability to be able to grow and expand with amazing abundance. And when I look around my home, I've got these incredible bunya pines around, and I've got these little seedlings of bunya pines around my house, and I have these ones that are like 2 or 3 foot tall, and I have bunya pines that are 6 foot tall, and I have bunya pines that are 30 and 40 foot tall. And they have manifested this growth all, well, I'm going to say by themselves, but it's the energy, it's that universal source of energy, enhanced by the sun and the air and the water and the nutrients that exist all around it, that allows it to do what it does naturally, and that is to grow and to be abundant. The only thing that stops it is when I come along and I say, no, I don't want this here, and I cut it off, or I trim it back, or I do whatever it is in order to sustain some distance between my home and the forest to keep my home safe, so things don't fall on it, and so branches don't break off, and I have less risk of being exposed to fire. And talking about fire, if you've ever been in the bush and you've seen the destruction that a fire has, and it's just within weeks, all of a sudden there's green, little manifestations of green spouting up everywhere, and within 12 months this is all replenished, and and there's growth back there and new vitality. Why am I using this? Because it's exactly the same for us. We're the ones in our stories, in our narratives, that keep pruning and stopping the growth. We're the ones that are stopping fulfilling, loving relationships, that are stopping abundance, that are stopping our freedom to be self-expressed and to have that ability to determine, to be self-determined in manifesting our own lives. We're the ones that are facing obstacles that create the failures that we experience. if we get ourselves out of the way, we are part of nature. We're a part of this planet in the same way that all of those elements help with the abundant growth of nature. We're part of that nature by virtue of us being here, and we're entitled to that same energy to help us to grow and to have abundance and to experience the greening, the viriditas, which is the experience of the joy. You know, when you look at green, that impact that it has of bringing joy, we're able to bring that joy, that greening within our own soul, and have those things manifest just by stepping back and getting out of the way. And that's what being the observer is able to do. So I don't know if you can hear what I'm saying, but literally we're the only ones getting in the way of the abundance. Just in the same way that we can trim and contain nature, we're doing that to the nature within ourselves. It's about getting out of the way. It's about reinforcing and being committed to being the observer, because that's the best way of getting out of the way, is when we see ourselves in a state of discombobulation, you know that we're in the way. It's our story, it's our narrative, it's our programming, it's these neural pathways in the brain that are getting in the way. And the way that we stop that taking over is to step back and be the observer. This is about allowing grace. This is about allowing, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it divinity, you can call it whatever name that you want, but there's this natural agenda that exists for abundance. And so what we're doing by virtue of H and A is by stepping back and being the observer, we're actually having you step out of your narrative, out of your programming, those neural pathways that have resulted in you having experiences that cause you suffering. And we're having you step into the place where you are no longer immersed in the narrative. You're now stepping back and observing it without attachment of any kind. And the key and the power and the gift of being able to practice being in that place is that you are presenting the opportunity for the universe, for God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, to do what it is doing constantly. You see, nature is constantly wanting to grow and be abundant. It is only us that is getting in the way, and that is exactly the same within our own consciousness. I hope that this is helpful in helping you to understand the power of meditation, the power of being the observer. In our case, we're taking a more contemplative approach to it than the Eastern approach of meditation, but meditation is doing the same thing. By virtue of being the observer, which is all meditation is, you're inviting the divine to manifest and become the basis of your reality. In our next blog, I'm going to be looking at L, and that's about taking the time to consider what would be a more loving alternative. If you remember, our definition in this of Western mindfulness, and mindfulness in the Western context, is remembering in each moment that you have the opportunity, the choice to be more loving and kind to yourself, to others, and the planet. And so this is about the idea that we can step back and be the observer while holding the intention of love. And that's going to be the basis of what we're going to be exploring in the third part of this mini-series on HALE in next month's blog. Now, please take the opportunity to find out more about what we do by having a look at our webpage, and check out about, look at our Facebook page. We also have a monthly e-news, an electronic newsletter that you can subscribe to, which is packed full of gems of memes and really wonderful quotes. This blog will be found on this, and this is the way that you can continue to receive these blogs, is subscribing to the newsletter. And they're just really wonderful tools to be able to help support you in living life more mindfully. Thanks for coming on board and being a part, and I'll get to speak to you again next week. See you then. Bye.